We would define a weed as a plant that is out of place. It's not supposed to be in the field that it's growing. So we won't necessarily define always docks and thistles and nettles as weeds, because we don't want to eradicate them entirely. But if a weed such as that gets dominant, then it really is a problem weed.
In an unimproved grassland or meadow, you will always have a certain amount of weed species, ideally just around the edge of that meadow, and usually no more than 5% of the total grassland area. You should aim to have a balance of species, which includes some weeds, as these plants are utilized by a number of insects and bird species. The problem weeds that you're likely to find in your meadow will be docks, nettles, thistles, ragwort, plus bracken encroachment, particularly around the edge. If your meadow has any of these weeds in large numbers, then some form of weed control will be required. The approach you choose will largely be determined by the problem you're faced with, remembering that some weed species regenerate by seed and some by rhizomes, or a combination of both. If you have isolated patches of weeds, you could do the work by hand, pulling or using one of the special hand tools that have now been developed.
This is a lazy dog tool, and you use it by placing the prongs either side of the plant, making sure you've got the visible root in between the prongs there, and gently ease back, pulling back, rocking on that foot there, easing it up till you pull all the taproot out in a gentle motion. Don't snatch, don't tug, nice and gentle, and you're trying to get all the taproot out, and then as it comes up, you see it come away, pick it up, put it to one side. It's effective because you can visibly see the results you've had. This we use mainly for dock or ragwort, and there is a tool designed for use on creeping thistles where you just scalp the thistle off at ground level. It's an ongoing battle, and you slowly win if you keep going at it. It's a daily chore almost, and you just need to keep at it and then set yourself a target and go for it.
Bracken bruising is a process in which you run over bracken and that crimps the stem of the bracken. The plant is under the illusion that it is still alive and functioning normally, so its energy goes up into the growth of the plant. When winter comes and obviously it wishes to store that energy, it can't get back down to the root, the rhizome, so over time the rhizome will deplete and will die. From the end of June to the end of August is the perfect time for bracken bruising.
If you think the problem is bigger, then a combination of targeted chemical application followed by cutting or hand pulling will probably be the best solution. The golden rule when using chemicals on weeds is that you always apply the chemical when the plant is actively growing, i.e. in spring or early summer. The most important thing to remember is that chemicals should only be applied to the weed in question and should never be blanket sprayed in wildflower grassland. Larger scale problems can be treated using an all-terrain vehicle mounted weed wipe. Before using a weed wiper, you should graze the sward as short as possible so that the problem weeds stand above the rest of the sward. A weed wipe works by taking the appropriate chemical from a tank which is fed at the desired rate to a roller. When trailed behind an ATV or tractor, the roller wipes chemical onto the highest plants in its path. A weed wipe is most effective if you carry out 2 passes across the weeds in different directions, and the chemical is applied at the appropriate time of the year. With problem weeds, such as thistles and docks, chemical treatment followed by a program of repeated cutting is a good strategy. It is crucial to cut weeds at the appropriate time. Again, ideally, you cut the weed as it is coming up to setting its flower head, and thereafter you then need to carry out 2 or 3 cutting operations to prevent the weeds from reflowering and potentially seeding. If you are using cutting to control weeds, it's usually sufficient to cut where there are problem areas as opposed to cutting the whole of the field. If you're looking for a contractor to control weeds, you should ideally find one who has experience of working on wildflower grasslands. Also, check that they have the appropriate certification. Managing meadows can be complex, so it is important to get some technical advice and support before you manage your meadow. The best place to get advice in the field is the Wheeled Meadows Initiative.